The great trials happened only once every 10 years. It was the grandest event in the Zareth Empire. A contest where the strongest warriors from across the galaxy came to prove themselves. The palace arena was full. Alien nobles in their jeweled robes sat in golden stands, cheering for blood and glory in the royal balcony. The alien Princess Saria leaned on the rail, her silver eyes scanning the new arrivals. And then she saw him a human. He didn't wear shining armor like the others. He didn't carry massive plasma blades or spiked shields. Instead, he stood in plain combat gear, his hands empty, his face calm. To Saria, he looked ordinary, too ordinary. Her lips curled into a smile. How amusing. She whispered to the noble beside her, "I'll make a little game." When the human stepped forward to register, Saria raised her voice so all nearby could hear. "If you survive the trials, human, I'll marry you," she announced, her voice ringing through the air. The nobles burst into laughter. The alien warriors roared with mockery. Even the court scribes chuckled as they recorded her words. Everyone knew the trials were deadly built. To kill anyone not born for battle, a human surviving. Impossible, but the human didn't laugh. He looked up at the royal balcony, his eyes locking with hers. And then he nodded once, a slow, deliberate nod. It wasn't a challenge. It was a promise. Something strange twisted in her stomach. Why did that look feel so certain? The announcer's voice boomed, calling all warriors to the first trial. The ground of the arena shifted, panels opening to reveal cages. From within came deep, rumbling growls. The first trial was called the Beast's Gate, Iron. Bars lifted, and monstrous alien predators burst into the arena. Creatures with razor spines, armored hides, and jaws wide enough to crush steel. The crowd screamed with excitement as warriors clashed with the beasts. Blades flashed, plasma guns roared. Blood sprayed across the sand. Saria leaned forward, expecting to see the human die in seconds, but he didn't rush to fight like the others. He moved to the side, watching, studying. One of the beasts, a scaled brute, twice his height, turned toward him with a deafening roar, instead of attacking head-on. The human grabbed a piece of broken spear from the sand and backed toward a stone pillar. The beast charged, but the human sidestepped at the last second. The pillar cracked under the beast's weight, and rubble fell on its head. The crowd gasped. He hadn't killed it, but he had stunned it. He moved quickly, climbing onto the beast's back and driving the broken spear into the gap between its armored plates. The monster collapsed with a final shuddering breath. Silence swept over the arena for a moment before the audience erupted in cheers. Even some alien warriors paused to glance at him. The human didn't celebrate. He just moved to help another wounded competitor. Dragging them out of danger, Saria's smile faded slightly. This wasn't just luck, he was thinking, planning. Using the arena itself as a weapon, she told herself it didn't matter. He would never survive all the trials. Still, her eyes kept following him. The first trial raged on for another 20 minutes. One by one, the beasts fell. But so did many warriors. When the final horn sounded, only 8 competitors remained standing. And the human was one of them. Blood streaked his face, sweat dripped down his neck, but his gaze was still steady. He looked up at the royal balcony again. This time, there was no nod, just a faint smile. As if to sigh one down, Saria felt a heat rise in her cheeks. No one had ever looked at her like that. Not as a princess, not as a trophy, but as something else. She wasn't sure she liked it, or maybe she liked it too much. Around her, the nobles whispered, "Impossible. How is the human still alive? It must be luck, nothing more. He won't last the second trial." But deep inside, a part of Saria wondered if her joke might have just turned into a royal problem. As the survivors were led away too, Rest before the next challenge. The human glanced over his shoulder once more. Their eyes met across the arena, and for the first time, Soraya looked away first. The night after the first trial, the palace halls were quiet, except for the muffled footsteps of guards patrolling the marble floors. The surviving warriors were kept in separate quarters, each guarded to prevent sabotage, but the air was thick with tension, somewhere in a dimly lit room. The human sat on a simple bed, cleaning the blood from his gear. His hands moved slowly, carefully, but his mind was far from calm. He knew that the next trial would not be about brute strength alone. There would be tricks, traps, and enemies waiting for him before the starting horn. Far above in her private chamber, Soraya could not sleep. She told herself she didn't care about the human's chances, but her mind kept returning to that calm smile he had given her in the arena. It had not been arrogance, had been something worse. It had been confidence, and that made her restless. The second trial began at dawn. The arena's sand had been replaced with massive black stone tiles, strange shifting patterns glowing beneath them. The announcer called it the Trial of Shadows. The warriors stepped onto the stone, and at once the light dimmed. It was not ordinary darkness. It was alive, moving, twisting around them like smoke. The human crouched low, his eyes adjusting. He heard the sound of claws scraping somewhere. Ahead, another warrior screamed. Then the sound cut off abruptly. Something big moved in the dark. The human didn't run. He took a small shard of reflective metal from his pocket, something he had picked up after the first trial, and angled it to catch the faintest glow from the arena walls. Every few seconds, he caught glimpses of movement. A hunter leaped toward him from the left, but he dropped flat, letting it sail overhead. In the dark, he heard it land on a pressure tile. The tile clicked, and a wall of spikes shot up from the floor, killing the creature instantly. The crowd, watching from magically enhanced viewing screens, gasped at the quick thinking. Somewhere in the viewing chamber, Soraya found herself leaning forward again. She had seen warriors win through brute force. But this human was different. He treated each trial like a puzzle. Every step, every pause, every breath was calculated. He moved deeper into the maze, passing bodies, some alien, some beasts, never slowing. Occasionally he would stop, listen, and throw a stone toward a suspicious shadow, triggering hidden traps before they could catch him. His calm was unnerving. When he finally emerged into the light, he was not alone. On his shoulder was a wounded alien warrior. Barely conscious, the crowd fell silent for a moment, unsure what to make of it. Warriors were competitors. Not a life-saving one was considered foolish, but the human walked forward without hesitation, placing the injured fighter in the care of the medics before stepping to the finish line. The announcer's voice boomed, declaring him one of the finalists. Cheers erupted, but they were mixed with murmurs of fear and disbelief. No one had expected the human to survive 2 trials in a row, let alone with this strange habit of saving. Others, from the balcony, Soraya's silver eyes locked on him again. This time she did not smile. She felt a strange pull, as if she had started a game she no longer understood the rules of. And deep down, she was beginning to wonder if he kept going like this, what would happen when he finally stood before her? The third trial was not announced in the arena. Instead, the survivors were taken deep beneath the palace, through corridors that smelled of rust and damp stone. The air grew colder with every step, and the only sound was the heavy clank of armored guards escorting them. The human walked at the back of the group, silent. Watching the way shadows shifted on the walls, they stopped at a massive steel door carved with alien runes. When it opened, a blast of cold air escaped, revealing a long tunnel lit by faint blue crystals. The announcer's voice echoed strangely, telling them this was the trial of the Forgotten Vaults. The goal was simple: reach the far end, but the vaults were ancient, filled with relics, guardians, and traps no one fully understood the moment they stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind them, locking with a sound that made the warriors glance at each other uneasily. The human took a slow breath, scanning the walls. The blue crystal light was dim and uneven, leaving deep shadows between each flicker. Somewhere far ahead, a metallic scraping echoed. They moved in a cautious line. One alien warrior at the front, swinging a massive blade to clear the path. Then came the first attacks. Something small, but impossibly fast, darted out of a side passage, slicing the lead warrior's armor open before vanishing. Panic spread instantly. Two fighters broke formation, chasing it into the dark. The human didn't move. He crouched, examining the floor where the attack had come from. Noticing a thin line of disturbed dust, he tapped the stone tile. It shifted slightly under his touch. Pressure triggered, he stood and spoke quietly to the others, warning them to step only where he stepped. Some ignored him. One screamed moments later when a spiked wall shot out of nowhere. The scraping sound grew louder, and then they saw it. One of the vault's guardians, a towering mechanical construct with six-bladed arms. Its eyes glowed red in the dim light as it charged. The warriors fought desperately, their weapons sparking against its metal body. The human didn't join them immediately. Instead, he ran toward the nearest wall, scanning for something. He found it a section of stone marked with the same runes as the entrance door. He pressed his weight against it, and the wall shifted, opening just enough to reveal a hidden panel of exposed gears and glowing conduits. He grabbed a loose metal bar from the ground and jammed it deep into the gears. The machine let out a grinding shriek, its movements faltering. That was all the others needed to destroy it. When the fight was over, most of the warriors were breathing hard, some wounded. But the human's eyes kept scanning the vault as if the real danger had not yet shown itself. They pressed forward, deeper into the twisting tunnels, until finally they reached the far door. The moment they stepped out into the sunlight, the crowd roared above them. The entire trial had been broadcast to the Empire. From her balcony, Soraya had watched every moment. Her heart had pounded when she saw him vanish into the shadows of the vault. And now, seeing him emerge again, alive and unshaken, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't amusement anymore. It was anticipation. That night, the palace was far from quiet. Rumors ran through every hall, from the servants' kitchens to the nobles' private lounges. The human's name was whispered with a mix of disbelief and unease. Some called him lucky. Others said he must be hiding alien blood. A few even claimed he was using forbidden technology. In a secluded courtyard lit by pale moonlight, a different kind of conversation was taking place. Three alien warriors from rival clans stood together, their faces hidden beneath their hoods. They had all lost close allies in the trials, and each blamed the human for upsetting the balance of the games. He was an outsider, and worse, he was making them look weak by the end of the night. They had agreed the human wouldn't live to see the next dawn, unaware of the plotting. The human was in his quarters, repairing the torn straps of his armor. His hands moved in steady, practiced motions. But his mind was alert. He had noticed the looks, the way some competitors avoided his gaze while others stared too long. He was expecting trouble. It came sooner than he thought. A faint click outside his door was followed by silence. Then, the lock disengaged with unnatural smoothness. He was already standing by the wall when the door swung open. The first attacker lunged, but the human sidestepped, slamming his shoulder into the intruder's ribs. The second came from behind, only to be tripped and thrown against the table. The third drew a curved blade, its edge humming with energy. The fight was fast, silent except for the sound of fists, feet, and shattered furniture. When it was over, to lay groaning on the floor. The third slumped unconscious against the wall. The human didn't finish them. He bound their hands with strips of torn bedding and shoved them out into the corridor, for the guards to find. From a shadowed balcony above, a figure had been watching. Soraya stepped forward, her expression unreadable. She had heard whispers of a plot and had come to see for herself if the human would survive. Now, seeing him standing over 3 defeated warriors without a single fatal strike, she felt something shift inside her. He wasn't just strong, he was dangerous in a way that didn't rely on killing. She descended quietly, pretending to arrive just as the guards did. Her silver eyes met his for the briefest moment, and she said, low enough that only he could hear, "The next trial. It's not meant to be one. Be ready." Then she turned and walked away, leaving him staring after her, the warning burning in his mind. The morning sky over the arena was the color of burning embers, a strange crimson haze rolling in from the distant mountains. The crowd was louder than ever, sensing that the next trial would be the turning point. The announcer's voice thundered across the grandstands, calling it the trial of fire and blood from his place among the finalists. The human glanced upward, searching the royal balcony. For a brief moment, he caught sight of Soraya. Her usual composed expression was gone. She looked tense, as if she was watching a man about to walk into his grave. He remembered her warning from the night before, and it kept his breathing steady. The ground shifted beneath them, stone platforms rising to form narrow bridges suspended over a churning river of molten rock. The heat was suffocating, waves of shimmering air distorting vision on the far side. The goal stood clear, a massive black gate etched with gold. The path to it, however, was a maze of collapsing walkways, falling debris, and jets of flame that erupted without warning. The horn sounded, and chaos erupted. Warriors charged forward, some sprinting across the bridges, others leaping from one to another. The first to run too far ahead triggered a chain reaction. An entire section of stone broke apart, sending 3 competitors plunging into the lava below. The human moved slower, each step deliberate, his eyes scanning not the path ahead but the rhythm of the flames and the tremors underfoot. A deafening crack split the air, and a section of bridge beneath another competitor gave way. Without thinking, the human sprinted toward them, catching their wrist just before they fell. The weight nearly pulled him over too, but he managed to drag them onto solid ground. The competitor, gasping for breath, stared at him in disbelief. No one saved rivals in the trials. As they pressed on, the air grew hotter. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs. The final stretch of bridge was shaking violently, molten splashes licking the edges. He could hear the crowd roaring, the smell of scorched stone thick in the air. A final jet of fire shot up in front of him, forcing him to make a choice: wait and risk the collapsing bridge or jump through the fading flames. He didn't hesitate. He ran straight into the fire, tucking into a roll as he passed through. His armor smoked, and his skin burned where the heat had touched it. But he landed on the other side, staggering only once before standing tall. The black gate loomed before him, and with the last of his strength, he shoved it open, collapsing onto the cool stone beyond. The sound of the horn signaling the trials and echoed around him, high above. Soraya found herself gripping the edge of her balcony rail, relief flooding her chest in a way she couldn't explain. He had done the impossible again, and this time, she realized with a strange certainty, he wasn't surviving for the crowd, he was surviving for her. The day of the final trial dawned under a heavy sky, thick clouds hanging low as if the world itself sensed what was about to happen. The arena floor had been cleared of traps, beasts, and obstacles, leaving only a wide, circular expanse of polished, black stone. This was not a contest of survival, it was a duel. The human stood alone at one end, his armor patched from the last trial but still bearing scorch marks. Across from him stepped the champion of the Zareth Empire. A towering alien warlord whose armor gleamed like molten silver. His presence made the crowd fall silent. This was no ordinary opponent. This was the man who had trained Princess Soraya in combat since she was a child. The one she had once called. Unbeatable, from the royal balcony, Soraya's fingers gripped the railing hard. Her father, the emperor, leaned toward her and murmured, "Watch closely. This will end your little game." She didn't answer, her eyes locked on the human. The horn sounded. And the warlord moved first, faster than anyone his size had the right to be. His massive blade sang through the air, striking with such force that each clash sent cracks through the stone floor. The human didn't try to meet the strikes head-on. Instead, he dodged, parried, and retreated. Letting the warlord waste energy in a storm of heavy blows, the crowd booed at first, thinking the human was stalling. But Soraya saw at every step, every pivot was deliberate. He was studying the warlord, learning his rhythm, searching for a weakness. Minutes passed, sweat dripping down his face. His breathing grew heavier. And still he endured the warlords. Strikes became slightly slower, his swings wider. That was when the human struck back. A quick sidestep, a twist of the blade, and he slammed the hilt into the warlord's wrist. The giant weapon clattered to the ground. The arena erupted in gasps. The warlord roared, lunging forward barehanded, but the human used the momentum, pulling him into a lock and forcing him down to one knee. The black stone beneath them cracked under the force, when the warlord finally yielded. The horn sounded again, long and low. The match was over. The human had won. Soraya's heart pounded. Her father's expression had gone cold. But the law was clear. She had made a royal promise before the entire court, and now that promise bound her. As the warlord rose and stepped back, the human looked up at her balcony, his expression unreadable, for the first time since the trials began. Soraya felt truly caught between two worlds' duty to her crown, and the pull of something she didn't yet want to name. The arena was still roaring when the human walked toward the center. His steps slow but unshaken, dust and shards of broken stone clung to his boots. His breathing was steady, though every muscle in his body carried the weight of the trials he had endured. Above, the imperial horns blared a sound reserved for victory. The emperor rose from his throne, his voice carrying across the vast space. By law of the Zareth Empire, a promise made before the court is binding, the human has triumphed in all trials. The word of my daughter shall now be honored. The crowd went silent, hundreds of alien eyes turning toward the royal balcony. Soraya stood frozen, her silver gaze locked on the man below. She remembered the smirk she had worn on that first day, the way she had tossed her words into the air as if they were nothing. But those words had returned to her now like a blade's edge. She descended the grand stairway, her gown shimmering under the twin suns. Every step echoed, loud in the quiet. The human watched her approach, his face unreadable. She stopped before him, close enough to see the tiny scorch marks on his skin from the trial of fire and blood. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Soraya exhaled slowly. "I thought it was a joke," she said quietly enough that only he could hear. "But you never treated it like one." The corner of his mouth lifted, not in mockery, but in something almost gentle. "Some promises are worth keeping," he replied. The emperor's voice broke the moment, demanding they face the crowd. The formal words of betrothal were spoken. The banners of the empire unfurled. The audience erupted in cheers, though some voices still hissed in disapproval. But Soraya barely heard them. Her mind was full of questions of what this marriage would mean for her, for the empire, and for him. And yet, as she stood beside the human in the center of the arena, she realized she no longer felt like she had lost a game. For the first time, it felt like she had just begun one.